Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Plot Twist and Freudian Slips podcast.
I'm Jules, a licensed therapist who spends all day analyzing people.
And I'm Mary, a diehard bookworm who loves to use books as an escape from reality.
And this is the podcast where we take fictional characters, drag them out of their fantasy worlds, and put them right here on the couch.
Because sometimes happily ever after is actually just codependency in a trench coat.
So, Mary, have you seen any good movies lately?
Yeah, I know you're kind of a Colleen Hoover hater, which is
Correct.
fine. Which is fine. I wouldn't say I'm a hater. Like, there's a few books of hers that I really, really, really love. One of which is Reminders of Him. And that just came out in a movie, so I went and saw that with my friend Riley. And I thought it was really good. It was very emotional. I cried in the book, so I knew I was probably going to be emotional in the movie.
Is that the one that's about, like, someone dies and someone was having an affair?
No, it's so this girl they get into a car accident and the guy ends up dying. And then she gets basically charged with his murder, so she spends like 6 or 7 years in jail.
Oh my gosh, I read this book and I have no recollection of this.
Oh my god. They were both high on drugs or something.
Oh yeah,
So that's why she got.
But
and she had a baby while she was in prison.
Okay.
But the baby got adopted by the guy's parents, and she lost like all her rights. So then it's her moving back to town when she gets out of prison and trying to connect with her daughter, even though the grandparents are like, hell no, you killed our son, da da da. And then she meets this bar owner, Ledger, who just happens to be her old boyfriend's like best friend back in the day, and she had never met him, and so they kind of start developing feelings, and then she writes the old boyfriend letters talking about the daughter and whatnot. So
is there another Colleen Hoover book then where it's like there's a car accident and someone was having, like, the two people who were together in the car were actually having an affair?
Are you talking about All Your Perfects? Because that's about a couple and they're like following them after infidelity.
No, someone certainly does. Which one is the one? I've heard so many of her books. I did go through a phase where I read Verity first, and then I was like, I love this. So then I kept reading her books. And then as time went on, I was like, I don't like her books. But there was one. Who's the flight attendant? Like the pilot. There's one about a pilot.
Oh yeah, Ugly Love,
Maybe
where
that's
he's like,
it?
well, I don't know, because he is like emotionally like blocked.
Yeah.
Like it's like friends with benefits, and then it's because like he had gotten into a car crash on the way home from the hospital with his wife and kid, and they died.
Well,
But it wasn't an affair.
yeah. Maybe I was just combining like some of her books. But
Yeah.
anyway, the movie was good.
Yeah, I'm really excited because Verity is coming out later this year.
I heard.
And that has like Anne Hathaway and Dakota Johnson, so I think they'll do it justice.
I think I had a dream about Anne Hathaway last night.
That's random.
Yeah. Just reminded. I love Dakota Johnson. One of those Nepo babies that is likable.
For sure. But yeah. I've been loving like movie, like our book adaptations into movies or like TV series. It's so interesting to see it like come to life. And some are like really big hits and some are really big misses.
As you're saying that, I'm thinking about how the new Harry Potter series is coming out.
I'm nervy about that one.
I don't really want to watch it. So whatever.
That's okay. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. But yeah, but the book we're going to be talking about today also has a TV adaptation for it. So I was able to read the book and watch the show, so we have a little bit more to discuss. Yes.
I need to read. I need to read this book, and I just haven't gotten around to it because I'm afraid I'm going to hurt my own feelings somehow.
If you're new here, here's how this works. I bring in a book or a character to the table. Usually Jules hasn't heard of it or read it. I give her the plot, the drama, the red flags, the tea, if you will.
And then I apply actual clinical theories to explain why they're acting like a chaotic mess. So we'll talk symptoms, diagnoses, and treatment plans.
Basically, I ruin the romance with logic.
And I ruin the fantasy with science. It is a beautiful partnership.
Yes, before we get started, just as a quick PSA for like content trigger warnings, all those will be listed in our show notes or the description wherever you're listening or watching. Please take those seriously. Obviously, your mental health is very important to us. So if there's something in there that you know will be too triggering for you, we totally understand. So just exit out of the episode. We'll just see you in the next one. Also, on similar lines to that, because we're talking about the book and the characters and the TV show, we basically break down the whole book. So there is major spoiler warnings. So if you have not read the book yet, go ahead and pause the episode, go read it, or watch the TV show, and come back. Or if you don't care about or if you don't care about spoilers, we'll just hop right in. Well, Jules, you ready to open the file?
Yes. Who is walking into our office today?
Yes, today we have two characters from the book, Normal People by Sally Rooney. This was recommended to us first by my friend Emma. Shout out to Emma.
Sure.
And then we got many more requests for this book on our TikTok and our YouTube when we posted which book should we talk about next? It was like 99% of the people picked Normal People.
Cool. Yeah. That's
yes. We have two main characters from this book. We have Marianne and Connell. It starts with them both in the Ireland equivalent of high school, and then it follows them throughout college and a little bit post-college. We have Marianne. She is very opposite of Connell. So she is outwardly cold, aloof, almost unlikable in a sense. She doesn't really have that many friends. She's super book smart. She gets like the top grades in her class, but she doesn't really have any friends. She lives in this really nice house. Basically, like they call it a mansion. She has a mom who is a solicitor, which is a lawyer. She has an older brother named Alan. And then her dad died when she was 13. And then Connell.
Probably not that long ago, right? Because how old is she?
It's like the end of their equivalent of like...
So she's like 18.
Yeah, probably like 16, 17. I think they like move a little bit faster.
Okay, yeah, so then it's not that long ago that his dad died.
Yeah. We do later find out that her dad was abusive to her mom. And then Connell is said to be kind of like the exact opposite of Marianne in terms of like personality. He is outwardly liked, sociable, attractive. He has
is she not attractive?
I wouldn't say she's not attractive, but she is very...
Well, they paint her in this way that sounds like
they paint her in this way as if she's not like what's the word? Like conventionally attractive, but that doesn't really matter to him because he's obviously attracted to her. But even though he is outwardly liked and like has a lot of friends and he's on like the rugby team, I think it is, or curling, I can't remember.
Oh.
He's inwardly has a lot of like emotions and can't really articulate how he's feeling the best way. He's working class. He's raised by a single mom named Lorraine. And Lorraine is actually the like maid or house cleaner for Marianne's family. So that's kind of how they chit chat outside of school because they don't really talk in school. Like they're very separate. Like he would almost be like embarrassed to be associated with her. In the terms of like not wanting to like feel inferior to his classmates, things like that.
Okay, I know where this is going. I'm having a reaction already. Okay,
yeah,
continue.
Yeah. So the first part of the book follows kind of their final year or so in high school. So they've grown up in the same town their whole lives. They've known each other. They're very different social class wise, popularity wise. But because Marianne's mom cleans her house, or Connell's mom cleans Marianne's house, he will come and pick up his mom every day after school. And so he'll come in and they'll kind of have like, they'll talk privately where there's not this pressure of people seeing from school. And they kind of bond over books and like different ideas and kind of like they feel like they can open up to each other more than they can open up to their peers. And then they begin, and she kind of admits that she has feelings for him, and he kind of admits it that he does feel the same way. But she doesn't want. Yeah, she's like, I like you, and he's like, okay, like me as like a friend or like like me. She's like, no, I like you.
Oh
And
my
so
God.
then they begin this kind of secret relationship. And
Okay.
he kind of insists on it being secret to kind of protect his social like status, like
Yeah.
because he is just so like internally just like insecure and afraid about what all his classmates will think if he's with this like not super popular girl or whatever. And so they begin this like secret kind of sexual relationship. He like takes her virginity, all that stuff.
So they're
While in
hooking up in
Yeah,
secret, and he won't, like, bring her around. He's ashamed. It sounds like he's ashamed or he's
yeah,
embarrassed or whatever of her,
something.
and obviously that's gonna be hard for a high school girl to accept that.
Right. Yeah. And so, as this kind of relationship continues to progress, they fall deeper in their feelings. Marianne kind of becomes almost like dependent on his attention, and he genuinely does care about her. But he finds it hard to have this balance of like being in love with her, but having this like debilitating like fear of people finding out and what they would say and whatnot.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, and they've kind of told each other they feel like they are in love, like whatever. But again, this all comes back to him just not being able to become public with their relationship. And
Mhm.
so this leads to their first breakup.
Oh gosh, they're
Because their first, yeah, glad you noticed that. Because around the end of the school year, they have what they call Debs, which is their prom, assuming.
Mhm. I
And
wonder if
instead
that's short
of
for, like, debutante. Does that stand for, like, debutante? No?
maybe, I don't know. They just called it
If you're
Debs and
either, let us know what the or wherever they do that, let us know.
right. So yeah, so he ends up asking one of the Popio girls, Rachel, to the Debs, and Marianne had assumed, okay, like we've confessed that we love each other. He's gonna ask me, but he doesn't. He kind of does not communicate at all, which is a reoccurring pattern here. And then ends up like telling her, thinking she wasn't gonna like care. I don't know what he was thinking, but he was basically thinking, I can't ask her because then my friends will know that I'm blah 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 blah.
Mhm. And
So
does she know that he is, like, feeling ashamed? That I mean, like, obviously, he's not, like, parading her around and not, like, having her meet his friends, but does she know, like, explicitly that he has these, like, weird, shameful feeling?
I think she knows, like, to a little extent, but I don't think she knows the extent of, like, his fears of just,
Mhm.
like, not being accepted in, like, social status.
Right.
Obviously, Marianne is hurt when he tells her that he had asked one of the popular girls, so she ends
Mhm.
things and kinda ghosts him, basically. Stops answering his
Okay.
calls, his texts. They don't speak, and then kinda, like, carry these unresolved feelings into
Mhm.
college, which they both end up going to the same college. They go to
Okay.
Trinity College, which
Mhm.
you just saw recently, didn't you?
I did, yeah. Did you go when you
Yeah.
were there?
We toured, like or kinda walked around the campus, but it was, like,
Yeah.
heavy downpouring rain when
Definitely.
we went there, so
Oh, that's
not a
nice.
lot, yeah. But yeah, so
Yeah.
then the book kinda jumps to college, and this is kinda where we see the social roles reverse almost with them.
Mhm.
Marianne, like, thrives in this new environment. She has new friends. She's, like, has a lot of confidence. She finds her, like, style. Like, she's not afraid to have, like, beat her, like, her cold personality. Like, she actually, has, like, a friend group. She gets a boyfriend. And Connell kinda feels kinda isolated. He doesn't really make that many friends really easy off the bat. He's obviously with a single mother. He's pretty, poor, so he is working and just really focus on our studies, where Marianne kind of reinvents herself and gets to
Mhm.
live out this kind of the popular kind of lifestyle. Couple months into college is when they reconnect. They see each other at a party, but she is dating this guy named Gareth who shares some classes with Connell.
Mhm.
And so it's a little bit of an awkward re-meeting because they never resolved kind of what had happened. He like feels inferior and intimidated by all these people and even Marianne,
Mhm.
but they slowly rebuild this kind of friendship. Like they kind of both admit they miss each other.
Am I wrong in thinking I'm thinking. Okay, so I feel like so chronically online because I feel like I haven't read the book, I haven't watched the show. I've seen so many like fan edits of this, so I feel like I do have like some knowledge. But I don't know how accurate it is. But am I correct in thinking that there's a scene in like where they like meet again in college and they pretend like they don't know each other?
Yeah, that's basically what happened, or
Yeah.
kinda. It's
Okay.
like because Gareth is like showing Connell around, and he's like, "Oh, let me introduce my girlfriend," and
Hmm.
they're like, "Hey, hey," and then they kind of like, "Oh, we went to school together," and they're like, "Oh,"
Okay.
but they kind of play it off. They don't say like, "Oh yeah, we were like in love in high school."
Right. Right. Okay.
But they kind of rekindle a friendship for like both like emotional and intellectual like friendship. He also starts dating a girl named Helen who's kind of very calm, stable, but not as intense of emotions that he feels for Marianne.
Isn't that the name of your sourdough?
Helen,
It
yeah.
it didn't really land on Helen?
We did land on Helen. Helen let me down. If you haven't seen my sourdough attempt on our social media,
Yeah, it's on TikTok, it's on Instagram.
it's on
It's
Instagram,
worth it.
TikTok. It's everywhere. You can check it out. We're gonna have to retry some other time with Helen.
Yeah, yeah. But so Connell is now dating Helen. Sorry, I heard the name and I was like, I have to
Yeah,
I was yeah.
yeah.
So they're dating.
Eventually, they obviously kind of remain emotionally entangled despite their partners. Marianne ends up breaking up with Gareth, and eventually Connell kind of ends things with Helen, and then they begin another kind of sort of relationship where they're like, but they're not communicating again.
Mhm.
Like, I cannot, like, oh my god, this book drove me up a wall. Like, if you want a book that, like, encapsulates miscommunication or just, like, no communication, this is the book for you.
What do you wish that they like, what are they supposed to be communicating about at this point? Just, like, anything?
Just, like,
Or
so here, prime examples coming up. So Connell loses his job that he was going to have over the summer, which would have let him stay in the Dublin area over a summer, but then he can't. So he loses his job, so he can't afford his rent. So he has to move back home. But like he can't bring himself to ask Marianne if he can stay with her. He just like feels this like overwhelming like feelings of like asking her if he could stay with her. Like he
Mhm.
can't. He just and then he like phrases it poorly when he's telling her like he has to move home from the summer. And he basically is like, you want to see other people? And so she's thinking, oh, he wants to see other people. He just
Of
wants to go home.
course.
It's another miscommunication leads to their
Mhm.
second breakup where Marianne basically is like, okay, he wants to see other people.
Mhm.
Um, and she tries to be like aloof about it. And so he's now like thinking like, oh, she just doesn't care. Like we were just fucking, like blah 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 blah. And they
Mhm.
separate again due to this like non-communication, miscommunication, whatever you want to
No
freaking
one is
call it.
speaking at all. Even it's a miscommunication, but like you said, it's like no communication at the same time. They're making assumptions about each other without confirming at
Yeah,
all. That is
right.
so frustrating.
Yeah. Then they kind of reconvene a few months later. They're friendly. They're friends now. They always come back to friendship. Marianne starts dating this guy named Jamie, who's like
Mhm.
controlling and like emotionally abusive. And he has a lot of like dominating like kinks.
Mhm.
And Marianne is very like into being submissive, but almost to an extent where she is like seeking this like validation or like she like assumes that she deserves to be treated in a way.
Like pouring, like dessert.
And he kind of like humiliates Jamie, like, oh my god, Jamie humiliates her like in front of friends, in private, and Connell can like
And is
sense
that
something.
part of
Huh?
the kink? Or is that part of the kink? Or
No,
is it
it's
just
no,
he's
that's
being a
like
jerk?
separate. That's just being an asshole. And then also in the bedroom, he's more into controlling stuff, and she is into it. But there's like to a certain extent, it's more like she just wants to be accepted and she wants to be in the submissive because whatever. Connell
That's
can
what
kind
he
of,
wants, it seems
yeah,
like she's doing it because that's what he wants, so she wants to, like, please him. So
yeah,
she's just doing his response.
yeah. Connell senses something is wrong, but doesn't really intervene in the right way anyways. So then Marianne increasingly is like degraded in these social circles. She ends up kind of ending that relationship. She loses a bunch of friends. And then Connell is just they're kind of friends, so they are keeping in touch, but it's not as much as they used to be. Then Marianne goes and like studies abroad in Sweden, and she begins this relationship with this guy named Lucas, who also again encourages like emotional and sexual submission.
Hmm.
And even though she consents to it, she's like in this like distress, psychological distress almost, and you can
Mhm.
like see and like read her like mental health declining significantly
Hmm.
during this time. And during this like study abroad, her and Connell like exchange emails, they kind of keep up to date.
Mhm.
And at the same time, one of Connell's friends from high school dies by suicide. So this kind of sends Connell into a kind of a spiral of his own feelings. He does
Mhm.
begin therapy. And
Hey,
he actively seeks help
that's awesome.
in these email communications. Like they're very honest with each other. They communicate about things going
So
on.
now they're communicating, like, about it sounds like they're communicating maybe about, like, their own feelings, but are they talking about their relationship at all, or, like, just, like, what's going on in the
No,
world?
just kind of what's going on in their world. Like
This is,
emotional
like,
stuff
a
is like
good
rekindling.
step. Okay, I guess that's fine. Let's like, you
Yeah.
gotta start somewhere. And also, I'm sure, like, that's so much easier for them to communicate via email where you're not being, like, vulnerable in front of another person. It's like you're just setting up your
Yeah.
email. It's kind of a little
So
bit of a cop out, but we'll
yeah.
take it.
So his friend's death kind of destabilizes him quite a bit. He
Mm.
has insomnia, like intrusive thoughts. He like emotionally withdraws from a lot of stuff. I think is like has suicidal ideation for just a brief moment before getting on medication and talking with his
Mhm.
therapist. Then Marianne leaves Luke and leaves Sweden and is very emotionally fragile. She comes back to Dublin area. They reconnect. At this point, Connell has kind of broken up with Helen again.
Mhm.
And now he and Marianne are kind of in this like final, like mutual kind of relationship where there's like more emotional honesty than there ever was before.
Mhm.
Marianne supports him through his like grief. And Connell kind of shows Marianne the non-exploitive love that there can be. And for the first time, their relationship is like public. They like it's very stable. And it's
Mm.
reciprocated like on the same on both ends. The
Right.
book kind of ends on a ambiguous ending.
Okay.
So Connell gets accepted into an MFA writing program in New York, and Marianne encourages him to go, but she
Mhm.
chooses to stay in Dublin. There's no like dramatic breakup, but there's no like forced resolution, and they kind of accept the uncertainty at the end. There's
Mhm.
kind of this like maybe they'll reconnect in the future. We don't know,
Okay.
and that's the book.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah,
It's like I'm sure reading it is more heartbreaking than it sounds. Like, it sounds like the story between them sounds hard and tumultuous, but I'm not as, like, torn up about it as I thought it would be, but I'm sure, like, actually reading it is probably a
yeah.
different experience.
I've obviously skimmed through
Yeah.
like for Marianne, like her mom is really cold and distant,
Mm,
and you don't really know why, but it's like assumed because of what she went through with her husband, and then
mm.
her brother is actually like abusive to her.
Oh my gosh.
So she doesn't have that solid kind of family background.
Yeah.
The miscommunication is mainly due to like Connell's like fear of like saying the wrong thing or like looking like
Mhm.
dumb or whatever.
Right. Yes, my initial thoughts as you were telling, like, telling the story, a lot of attachment issues here, which we talked about attachment maybe in our, like, first or second episode, but just, like, a quick recap. Attachment is how we act in relationships to other people. It's formed in childhood. Some people, if I'm not mistaken, some people believe that attachment forms when you're in the womb, which I can kinda see, like, it's like your relationship to, like, your mother. But anyway, if you're interested in that, you can do your own research on that 'cause I love that. Long story short, attachment is, like, how we are in the relationship with other people, and it's formed early on. So my first initial thoughts are that they have some attachment wounds, and that means that there's, like, some stuff in childhood that has gone on that's affecting them today. So, like, Marianne's dad's death, if her brother is abusive, her mom is cold. I'm like, oh my gosh, if your mom is your primary caregiver and she's cold to you, like, hello, of course, like, you're gonna go seek this attachment, like, these warm vibes, so to speak, like from someone else. But it also might not show you, it also might show you that like how to not be in a relationship, or like things that what am I trying to say? Like it's not modeling like a super stable relationship if your primary caregiver is not like a safe person. So it would make sense. All that to say is that it would make sense that Marianne would maybe seek or continue to like be in a relationship with someone who is not necessarily emotionally safe. And it sounds like some of her other relationships too were not emotionally safe either. So it makes sense that that pattern is repeating. And for Connell, similar but different, like also some attachment wounds. You didn't mention his dad. Any
I don't think
no.
his dad was ever mentioned, but I think his mom is pretty young. You know?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like dad's not in the picture, single mother, so maybe, I'm sure she is having to work really hard. Maybe she's just not like around as much as she'd like to be. Like, I don't know. I'm just making a bunch of assumptions. But he also might have some attachment wounds. So he might also be seeking some of that comfort and safety in relationships with some people who may not be able to offer that. Like Marianne doesn't really offer the communication either. So they're definitely in like this pattern of attaching themselves to someone who is not emotionally available. And obviously it doesn't play out for well until the end of the book where I mean, at least he went to therapy.
Huh?
That's did it seem like did I don't know how the book is written, but if it's from like
Yeah.
his point of view or her point of view or what, but did it seem like it was helpful for
Yeah,
him?
it was definitely helpful. Like he got on some medication and then he was like kind of crawled out of this like hole that he was like spiraling into.
Yeah, medication can be super helpful.
Mhm.
Nice.
Yeah.
What were some of the differences or like did you notice anything different from watching the show versus reading the book?
No, I felt like the show really followed the book pretty well. I think it was interesting because when you're reading the book, like you're obviously like in the mind of the character, so you're able to
Mm,
understand it a little bit more. Whereas if you were
right.
to like watch the show, like you have to really watch the actors and like how they portray the emotions.
Mhm.
So that I feel like if you hadn't read the book, it might be a little bit harder to understand why they're doing the things they're doing because you're not getting the
Mhm.
first person, I guess, POV of inside his brain and why he's like avoiding being in any sort of relationship with her that goes past
Mhm.
like sexual or whatever.
Right. Right.
But I felt like
Yeah.
it followed it pretty similarly. I will say I hated the no quotation marks.
I've heard that about Sally Rooney.
I don't get why. I looked it up apparently just because it like for continuity purposes. No.
What do you
Uh
mean by continuity purposes?
like it for apparently it flows better. I don't know. I only got like
For
30%
whom?
in. Yeah. I only got like 30% and I was like I can't do this, so I had to get the audiobook. I was like I just can't get over this. It's so hard cuz like I'll be reading it as if it's like they're
Yeah,
describing something and then I
description.
read a sentence where I'm thinking it's still describing something and it's like, "Oh no, they're actually saying this out loud." So, I got
That's so frustrating. And
the
also
audiobook.
yeah. Well, how is that, like, proper, like, language?
I don't know.
How is that published? That's
I really
annoying.
don't know. Crown Publishing, let us know.
Let us know, Crown Publishing.
Yeah, I don't know, but
No.
that was yeah, so I did audiobook for a majority of it, which
Mhm.
was fun because it's like a Irish accent or whatever.
Oh, really?
Um,
It's
yeah.
fun. That's cool. I love audiobooks. I think they're great. Like I use them all the time when I'm multitasking and stuff, or like if I'm driving, especially. My only caveat with audiobooks is that like because it's being read and someone else is reading it to you, I feel like it almost loses that like for me, like this emotional like connection of like
Mhm.
when I'm reading it myself. So sometimes I just feel a little removed, but it's
Yeah,
a good
and al
alternative.
but also this book is very, like, character heavy, there's not, like,
Mhm.
any plot at all.
Right.
So that, I think, was hard for me to get into the book
Mhm.
personally, but I don't know if I would classify this book as a romance book.
No, it doesn't sound like it.
Yeah, I I don't know. I texted my friend Emma, and I was like, "Okay, we're recording. Let me know your thoughts if you have any questions for Jules." And she goes, "Okay," and, like, sent a list. So she goes, "1, I hate Sally Rooney's writing style," which I'm thinking
True.
she's alluding to the quotation marks.
Yes. Yeah.
'Cause same. She goes, "Love how it follows them from high school into adulthood and kinda shows the progression or, like, lack thereof
Mm,
progression. Because even though they're growing up and quote unquote maturing, like, they still have,
yeah.
like, the same issues time and time again."
Mhm.
She said it's a really great example of, like, miscommunication or unclear communication because they never fucking talk to each other.
Right.
Like, if they just took the time to, like, sit down and actually, like,
Just say what's on your
say,
mind.
"Hey, can I move in with you for the summer? I wanna stay with you here. I don't wanna move home."
Then there would be no book. There would be no TV show.
That's true. She said that she really relates to Marianne because Marianne was, like, so sexualized when she was youngish, and she never really learned how to understand that sex doesn't equal love.
That's a great point.
Yeah, and she said this before, but she says, she thinks that it's, like, a good example of avoidance. I don't know if you agree with that or not?
Yes. Yeah, they're totally by not communicating, they're totally avoiding these hard emotional moments, and maybe because they don't have the tools to, like, work through it, but yeah, it's, like, quote, unquote, "easier" to, like, not have these hard conversations, but then look what happens. Then they
Right.
keep breaking up, and they keep being in turmoil and, all this stuff.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I absolutely agree with that.
Yeah. Um, and then she goes, kinda 'cause I asked her if she had any questions for you specifically, and she goes, "I guess I would ask Jules more about, like, anxious/avoidant attachment." She's like, "I know you've covered it
Yeah.
a little bit in previous episodes, but what do you think about unlearning those behaviors and if it's possible for avoidant attachments to have healthy relationships?"
Those are great questions. I would say yes, totally possible to have those healthy relationships. It does take a lot of work, though, to move into that secure attachment zone. And that work looks like unlearning past patterns. You're probably working through trauma. There's trauma attached to being like anxious avoidant. You would need to learn like communication skill, and there's a lot, and you talked about this too with Connell, like a lot of low self-esteem, this internal, yeah, just like some low self-esteem going on. And that probably
Like,
stems from
almost
trauma.
like social anxiety.
Yeah. Social anxiety. There's a lot of like layered things, but it's like the self-deprecation. It sounds
Mhm,
like when he started to go to college and he realized like, oh shit, like I'm not popular anymore. It sounds like
mhm,
internally that was bringing some stuff up for him, making him feel badly. So,
yeah,
yes, it's totally possible to move to secure attachment and have healthy relationships. It just takes a lot of work.
yeah. You hear that, Emma?
Oh.
"Love you, girl." She goes, "AKA free therapy session. Girl, you're getting it."
I love it.
And then she goes, "Also, the fact that she ended the book without a kind of a clear ending about what happens between them also kinda really drives home that kinda miscommunication trope."
Hmm.
Which I don't know if I would agree with the miscommunication trope at the end because they do kinda come to the agreement healthily that they're gonna go do their own thing and see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, not every book has to have like a perfectly beautiful wrapped up, ending where they ride off into the sunset. I
It
think
would
that
be nice.
would be nice, and I think that would put this book more into the romance category
Yeah,
because
yeah.
that's like common theme of like every romance book ever is that
Right.
it's going to end in a happily ever after
Right.
situation, and this feels more like fiction, just like general
Yeah.
fiction vibes,
For
contemporary fiction. Is that what it's
yeah,
called?
I think so. I don't know.
Like The Wedding People, which I thought was a romance, and then I read it, and I was like, "This is not a ro
Yeah, this
this is a contemporary fiction."
yeah. So, yeah. Yeah, that's
Cool.
all I got.
So, what
Um,
would you rate this out of 5?
ah, ooh, I rated this a 2.75.
That's low! Oh my
Oh, I
gosh,
know.
I can't say anything about because I haven't read it, so I can't,
Yeah,
but I feel like if I read it, I would give it higher than that for some
I
reason. I
know. I
just
feel probably an unpopular opinion. I don't it was just maybe it's the writing again. I was just really bored. It was really hard to get through.
Mhm,
Even just listening
mhm,
to the audiobook, I felt myself, like, zoning out, and I'm like,
yeah.
"Shit," like, I just missed a scene or whatever, but let me backtrack.
Say, like, there's no plot, like, the characters, the
Yeah,
relationship, the plot, but sometimes that could be a little dry.
And like, yeah, and like, you know, I have read books where it's very character based, but I was like obsessed with the characters and like I was rooting for them and I would read them freaking reading the newspaper on the toilet type of thing. But I was like just so unconnected to these characters because of the lack of communication, which is just so not me. Like if my man that I was fucking was like, "Oh, I can't afford my rent. I got to move home." And I have a perfectly good apartment that I live by myself in, I'd be like, "Oh, why don't you just stay with me for the summer?"
Really? I
So,
wouldn't.
oh, I'd come on.
Two
I mean, like,
people.
we're
That's
dating,
really
or
kind of you. Dating, yes.
and they've
Dating,
known
yes.
each other. They've known each other since high school. They're
He
dating,
was
sleeping
mean.
together, and it's like up 2 months tops. So,
He
and
was
then
mean to her in high school.
no, he wasn't mean.
That is mean. Being ashamed of
it,
someone.
it's mean adjacent. It's not. He wasn't like.
Jeez. Okay.
But yeah, so that was just, like, sending me through the roof. I was like, if they took 2 seconds to just, like, slow down and so I don't know. Maybe that would make it, like, if it's, like, easier to watch it as, like, a television show
Mhm.
when it's, like, more character-based, but
Yeah.
I don't know, to each their own. As
I
of right
feel like
now, it
you
was just
rated well,
meh.
because you rated it at 2.75, I feel like that probably means I would really love this book. And I feel like we're always so opposite on our ratings. I'm like, "Oh, I really should read this."
Well, I thought I was gonna, like, love it because, like, my friend Emma, my friend Tina,
Mhm.
even my grandma was like, "Normal people, let's see if Jules thinks they're normal." Like, they're not normal. These people need to freaking figure their life out.
So, for those who absolutely love Normal People by Sally Rooney, unlike our dear Mary, what books do you have that kind of have a similar vibe that maybe you would recommend?
Yeah, I actually have one book to recommend. This book follows this couple who's not really like a couple over
Mhm.
a series of years from high school to adulthood. It's called A Love Letter to Whiskey by Kandi Steiner. What is that face? What is that face?
I didn't like that one. I did not like that one. You recommended that one to me and I didn't like it.
What is wrong with you?
So opposite when it comes to books.
Oh my god, I know. I loved that one, and I felt like that was like
Continuing
it's
your
like
rec.
very
Everyone can ignore me. Everyone
very
can ignore me.
I felt like it was like very similar to Normal People where it's like they're on again, off again. They're like seeing other people,
Mhm.
like they're not communicating, but for some reason that one just did it for me. That one's a 5-star. Emma, if you're listening, go read this one. I think you'll like it. But yeah.
Anyway, I'm looking it up on Goodreads to see what I gave it.
Okay.
I gave it 3 stars, and I didn't put any commentary, but I know I didn't love it.
My commentary was 5 billion stars. This book was simply perfection. And if you disagree, you're wrong.
Then I'm wrong.
Yep, that's that on that.
That's it on that. Well, from the clinical side, if you found yourself feeling frustrated with the lack of communication between Marianne and Connell, I would highly recommend learning more about attachment styles if it sounds like that's something that you might be interested in. I believe there's a website that I use in practice sometimes, and I want to say it's called attachmentproject.com or attachmentproject. One of the two. It has some really great digestible information on attachment styles. It explains it in a much more concise way than I ever could. And there is even a little attachment style quiz that you can take. Take it with a grain of salt. It's like an online quiz. But it does tell you what your attachment style is, and it like maps it out for you to like on this cool matrix of like what your attachment style with your mom is, where your attachment style is with your dad, with friends, with a romantic partner. So it's cool. It's a pretty like a mini deep dive. So if you're interested in attachment style, definitely check that out.
Question for someone who is like avoidant, like Connell and Marianne, what would be like one thing they could work on to start with? Building block.
Yeah, that's great. If you are avoidant, my first curiosity is, are you aware you're avoidant? So I guess to even like have a building block, you would have to be like aware that that's something
Mhm.
that like a category that you fall into. So let's say that we're starting with someone who knows that they're avoidant.
Mm-hmm.
Then
Emma.
I would want to I'd be curious about things in childhood, maybe that led you to feeling this way, that like it's not always safe to communicate your wants and needs. So I would do a little like self-reflection, and then I'd also like a baby step, just work on communicating in small ways. If there's a text that you've been putting off sending, maybe send that text. Even if it's like, setting a time in like your calendar, like, block off 10 minutes to like reply to this text that I've been ignoring to this friend who reached out like a week ago or something like that. Like I would very small baby steps to start with.
Yeah. All right, cool. And I thought we could do some 1-star reviews of this book. Okay. Number 1. I checked 3 times to see if there was something wrong with my Kindle copy, only to find out that leaving out quotation marks was intentional. Absolutely unforgivable.
But that's so interesting that's so impactful that impacted like the stars. It's like not even about the story.
Normal people. More like people who are anything but normal. Shaking my head.
Oh.
Thank God it's finally over.
Is that how you felt?
Yeah.
Was that your review?
Yeah, close. Another one. Oh, look, another bunch of self-absorbed idiots who were never taught to communicate.
Yeah, harsh but true.
Next one. Please let me know when something happens.
I feel like that was you.
Yeah.
Our next 1-star review should be a bunch of 1-star reviews, but then somewhere in the middle, like, is your review.
And people have to guess which one's mine. Perfect. And then last one. Bon voyage to this trash.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Well, I mean, there's always going to be 1-star reviews because I was going to say that's so crazy. It's such a popular book, but
yeah. I mean, and I think there was very little like 1-star reviews with normal people. Let me see what the average rating was. Yeah. It has almost 2 million reviews, and it's at a 3.81. So
which I feel like is
pretty average.
Yeah, when you have that many people chiming in.
Yeah. And there's more 4 stars than like 5 or 3 or 2 or 1. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, in this field, we always like to get a second opinion. So let us know, are we on the right track with this attachment stuff, or are we just totally projecting?
Slide into our DMs. We're on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, the whole 9 yards, and let us know your thoughts.
By leaving a 5-star review wherever you're listening helps us out a lot, and it also acts as a little dopamine hit for us, which is very regulating.
Until next time, keep turning the pages.
And remember, reality is stressful. Read responsibly. And as we end, a quick reminder, I am a licensed therapist, but this podcast is for entertainment purposes only. The discussions here are theoretical and apply to fictional characters. This is not a medical podcast. I am not your therapist, and listening to this podcast does not establish a client-therapist relationship. If you are experiencing a mental health emergency, please contact 988 or go to your nearest emergency room.
And before we sign off, I have a riddle for next episode's book. I begin at the edge where 2 strangers meet, one lost in silence, one restless offbeat. We travel through places the map won't defend, collecting small wonders that try to mend. One learns to live, one fades from sight, yet both leave marks in borrowed light. And for a quick update for our listeners, we've gotten some feedback on the riddle part and wanting to know what the next book is going to be. And so instead of spoiling the answer right off the bat, we will put the answer in our show notes or the description so that way you have a couple weeks to read the next book so you're prepared for the next episode. Other than that, we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.